The city was wrapped in quiet silver light, snowflakes drifting down like feathers over the tall glass buildings. Christmas lights blinked from windows across the skyline, filling the streets with color and cheer. But in the corner penthouse, Ethan Cole sat in near darkness, staring at the fireplace that hadn't been lit in years. The billionaire CEO of Cole Industries, a man who could buy anything, fix anything, sat in silence nursing a glass of untouched whiskey. The staff had all gone home for the holidays. The air smelled faintly of dust and solitude. On the large oak table lay dozens of unopened Christmas cards from business partners, all carefully addressed to Mr. Cole. Not one said Ethan, not one meant something real. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Merry Christmas," he muttered bitterly to the empty room. Outside, laughter echoed from the street below, children throwing snowballs, couples carrying gifts, life moving on without him. And then, a soft sound interrupted the silence. Knock, knock, knock. Ethan frowned. No one ever knocked on his door. He set down his glass and crossed the marble floor. When he opened it, there was no one. Just a cold rush of wind and a small red envelope sitting in a drift of snow. It was wrinkled, written on with crayons, and decorated with little hearts and stick figures. On the front, in shaky handwriting, it said, "To the man who looks lonely from our window." He blinked. From our window? Curiosity tugged at him. He looked across the street and saw the run-down apartment complex opposite his building. One window glowed warmly with light and tinsel. 3 tiny shapes darted behind the curtain. He smiled faintly and opened the envelope. Inside was a small, folded piece of notebook paper. The writing was uneven, the letters big and childish. "Dear Mr. Lonely, we see you from our window every night. You always sit alone and Mommy says maybe you just need friends. We made cookies for you. Sorry if they're ugly, we tried our best. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lonely. Love, Emma, Ellie, and Eva. We're triplets." His eyes lingered on the word lonely. It shouldn't have hurt, but it did. He noticed a little tin beside the letter, slightly dented, tied with a blue ribbon. Inside were 6 cookies, burnt edges, uneven shapes, and yet the smell, sweet and warm, filled the cold space around him. Something inside Ethan cracked open. He turned toward the window again and saw 3 small faces peeking out, giggling before hiding behind the curtain. For the first time in years, he laughed, really laughed. He raised the cookie tin toward the window and mouthed, "Thank you." And from across the street, 3 little hands waved wildly, as if they'd just saved Christmas itself. That night, Ethan didn't sit in silence. He lit the fireplace, turned on the lights, and placed the red envelope on his desk. It became the only Christmas card he'd ever kept. The next morning, the snow had stopped, and sunlight spilled through the apartment windows like gold. Across the street, in a small 2-bedroom apartment, Grace Miller, a young single mom, tied her hair back and helped her daughters button their coats. "All right, my elves. Mommy has to work the breakfast shift at the diner. You 3 behave, okay?" "Yes, Mommy." The girls chimed in unison, Emma, Ellie, and Eva identical except for their hair ribbons. Grace smiled, her eyes tired but warm. "And no more sneaking letters to strangers, all right?" The girls giggled. "But Mommy, he looked so sad." Emma said, "He needed a Christmas friend." Grace sighed, trying not to smile. "I know, sweethearts. But not everyone wants company." Before she could finish, a knock echoed at the door. Grace frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, her breath caught. Standing there, tall, handsome, and very out of place in the shabby hallway, was the man from across the street. Ethan Cole, dressed in a dark coat, snow melting from his shoulders. He smiled gently. "Good morning. Are you Grace Miller?" She nodded cautiously. "Yes, can I help you?" He held up the red envelope, now neatly pressed and protected in his hand. "I believe your daughters sent me this." Grace's heart dropped. "Oh, God. I'm so sorry, Mr. Cole. I didn't know they—" "Please," he interrupted softly. "Don't apologize. It's the best gift I've ever received." Before she could reply, 3 small voices squealed from behind her. "Mr. Lonely." Ethan laughed quietly, kneeling as the triplets ran to him, eyes bright with excitement. "You got our letter," Ava said proudly. "I did," Ethan said, smiling at them. "And I read every word." He reached into his coat and pulled out 3 small gift bags, each one with their names written on them. Inside were dolls, mittens, and small snow globes. The girls gasped. "You remembered our names." Grace's eyes filled. "Mr. Cole, this is too much." "No," he said softly. "Last night your girls reminded me what Christmas really means. I've spent years surrounded by money, success, and people who only smile for what they can get. But they—" He looked at the triplets, his voice thick. "They gave me something real." Grace didn't know what to say. For a man who could buy the world, his gratitude sounded genuine, fragile even. Ethan hesitated, then asked, "If it's not too forward, could I join you for breakfast? I don't have anyone waiting at home." Grace blinked in surprise, then smiled softly. "We'd be honored." The triplets cheered, pulling him inside. At the small wooden table, Ethan sat across from them as Grace served pancakes from a cracked plate. Laughter filled the room, syrup spilled, and snow fell gently outside. And for the first time in his life, Ethan felt something money could never buy: warmth, belonging, family. When little Ellie leaned over and whispered, "See, Mr. Lonely, you're not lonely anymore," he smiled through the lump in his throat and replied, "No, sweetheart, not anymore." Later, when he returned to his apartment, he didn't turn off the lights. He looked out the window at the glowing apartment across the street and smiled. Christmas, he realized, wasn't about having everything. It was about being seen, and finally he was.